Luke, the double tender engine is a very good engine on the island of Sodor. He likes his tenders because he's a very good double tender engine, and all the engines on the island of Sodor think how special he is, and some of the jealous engines like Mike and Henry doesn't think he's special at all. It's because they're jealous of his two tenders. But just then Mike said this to Henry. "Oh," he said, "how come he has two tenders? This is so lame." "Maybe it's because he wants to be special," said Henry. "That didn't make sense," said Mike. "Yes, it does," said Henry, "if you see what I mean." But Luke was so sad because he found those insults disturbing him. So just then, Billy, the orange tank engine, decided to talk to Luke for a while. He was going to help a friend. When he said this to Luke, "Don't listen to what they say. Don't listen to what they say. Don't listen to what they say, you know," he said. "They're very jealous of you." What do you mean?" asked Luke. "Well, when I first came to this railway," said Billy, "all the engines teased me because I'm a bright orangey tank engine, because they used to think that I'm a giant orange." "Well, what do you mean?" asked Luke. "Because you kind of look different like me." "Well, sometimes you do, I do, and sometimes we do, and sometimes we don't," said Billy. So yeah, said Billy. "I don't know what I could think about those engines, because I'm confused about how many years they've been to this railway." "Well, I don't as well," said Luke. "I don't as well," said Luke. "Maybe I know," said Billy's driver. Remember, Mike came here last year, but this year he has returned. Henry kind of came here for about how many years, but I don't know how many years he's been to this railway," said his driver. "Because we'll have to tell the Fat Controller that," he said, because they were confused about how many years they've been there, because Mike and Henry have been to this railway for a couple of years ago, and Donald and Rosie are both old engines. They don't know what they're doing, so they decided not to follow the orders. Well, besides or not," said Billy. "Well, besides or not," said Billy, "what should we do? What should we do? Tell them off?" Brilliant, said Luke. "This will make them think that I'm the best engine ever." "Exactly," said Billy. Billy puffed away, but just then, Luke was about to have a rest in the sheds when suddenly the turntable was jammed and broke. So But just then, the turntable was jammed. So Luke was gonna have a rest in there, but when suddenly he wasn't watching where he was going, as Luke's second tender crashed into the turntable. He couldn't move now, and he became stuck. After, when he got back on the rails, the two jealous engines laughed at him. "Well, that will serve him right," said Mike. "He can't do anything proper at all, like being useful, actually," said Henry. "That didn't make sense again," said Mike. "Oh, sorry," said Henry. "I better stop talking." You better, said Mike, and the other engines agreed. But just then, Billy had an idea. I know, he said. "We'll teach him a lesson. Bump him off the rails, and then after when they feel sorry for you, they'll think you're the really useful engine on the island of Sodor. We'll do that, okay? Let's go in the sheds." Okay, said Luke, and with that, Billy puffed away to meet up with Molly again, while Luke was ready. "Oh," he said. "Oh," said Mike. "Who knows?" Mike had been done teasing Luke as he puffed away. he didn't. Luke knows that Mike was on his line. "Who even cares?" said Mike. "I'm the most really useful engine on the railway." But he didn't agree so. But just then, Luke, however, while he was puffing along the track, he did not know what he was still doing. But just then, he realised what Mike was still doing. But Mike knew what Luke is still doing. He saw Luke behind him. It was because he saw him behind the glass, behind Dunscan's glass windows, and it looked like a mirror. "Goodness," he said, "he's behind me. What should I do?" But Luke didn't know what to do. He realised that Mike was trying to make him back off when suddenly Luke knew what was happening. As when he was about to go, he knew what he was still doing. As he went on the edge of the line, he realised that Henry wasn't keen on him on the club. As Mike said this to Luke, "Back off, tender engine. Back off, double tender engine. You're not allowed in my club," he said. "Only engines." But Luke was going to back off when suddenly he realised the rails were slippery. He nearly slipped into a ditch as Mike crashed into one of Luke's tenders. And with that, the accident was everywhere. As the accident went everywhere, Luke's tenders were derailed, except Luke. Luke's tenders were derailed, except Luke. His tenders were stuck, so was Luke as well, as Mike was lying down on his first tender. "Oh," he said, "this feels so uncomfortable. He grumbled, "this is making me feel so uncomfortable." Billy saw that, and the Fat Controller was disappointed in Mike. "Mike," he said, how could you crash into an engine's first tender? I'm very disappointed in you." "Sorry, sir," said Mike. "I know how you feel," said the Fat Controller. Just go somewhere else to think about how silly you still are to a new engine like him. He is still new to the railway. He and Hero are both good friends, and you should know that by now for what you're still really like with these two." "Sorry, sir," said Mike. And with that, Mike was back on the rails, and Luke's tenders were back on the tracks. And as for Mike was grounded in the sheds. When he went inside, the engines thought it was a little bit funny, but Mike did not think so. The turntable was already fixed, so Mike went into the sheds for the rest of the day. He knew what he did, but there were really two things he can think about. But there were two things he can only think about. But there were only two things he can still think about: tenders and the crash. And he knew what made him do all this. The engines also in the sheds decided not to listen to his rumours, but Mike did not think so. He decided not to make that rumour up again. So he did not know why. How could he do this? He slept in the sheds to think about that he wants to pay Luke out again. And he did. And with that, he was in the sheds for the rest of the night and for the rest of the day forever.